banana cinnamon rolls. And it's really simple because I already made it up, and it's just a matter of joining the ingredients. So, my name is Lana, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm over here sipping on an elixir that I made. I like my glass straw, I like my glass jars, because they're less porous than plastic and any of those other crazy things that we use in the world, right? All right, so this is really simple. Ultimately, what I'm going to recommend, you're going to take 20 to 25 Medjool dates. You're going to soak them after you take the pits out. You know, dates sometimes can be the pits. And, you know, happy Valentine's Day, because this is what today is. And this is like a self-love, because this is a sacred temple. Your body, everything that you put inside of your mouth, your eyes, your ears, your nose, what you touch, is information, is data, is nourishment. How do you nourish yourself? How do you take in the world? Because the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so therefore, whatever it is you input into this vessel, the sacred temple that you should be dedicated and devoted and living in prayer at all times. But most of us were distracted. There's a whole wide world out around us, and most of us are not being present to the gift of the now. We're so caught up in the outside world. Instead of going within, we're going without. And the outside is what feeds the inside. The more aware you are from the inside of what's coming in from the outside, the more attuned you can be to what influences you. And so therefore, the more that you know thyself well, because that's what this is all about, the better you know yourself, you know your patterns, you embrace yourself to be whole, the good, the bad, the ugly, whether you're right or you're wrong, the duality, the polarities, the yin, the yang, the this, the that, the feminine, the masculine. We got a left, we got a right, we got an up, we got a down, we got an inside, we got an outside. For everything that is part of duality, a this or a that, a one or a zero, a plus or a minus, a negative, a positive, there's always an opposite, because opposites attract. Plus and minus equals a whole. And that's what we're all here to glean, to learn through our experience, through this life. Everything that you go through is about coming back to the present, the middle, the neutrality, the 0 point. Yes, I have a fan over my head. This is my halo. When we come back to the center, the sacredness of self, what is within, instead of going without, the more we embrace all our parts, because what we're doing is reclaiming the fragments of our lives. These are the fragments of our lives. Remember that soap opera, Days of Our Lives? We got so caught up in someone else's life, we lost sight of our own. A lot of people out there doing that. We've all been, you know, guilty of it. The guilty pleasure of living through someone else's experience. But it's much more pleasurable when you're present to your own experience. It's much more pleasurable when you get to dictate your own life. You get to write your own story. You get to create it. That's how masterful you need to be and are. You are the master of your reality. And that life is a series of choices, not mistakes. We don't make mistakes. We just make choices. So when you change, you reframe the way you look at things, perspective is everything, then your life changes. Instead of seeing things done to you, see how maybe they are presented for you, an opportunity to evolve, to grow, to become whole again. That whenever we have fallen into the victimhood mentality, it's taken us out of our power, out of our peace. So there are many times in our experience in our lives, we're going to fall victim, not to another, but to our own mind, our own beliefs. That our biggest addiction in life is to the dogma, the rigidity, that I can't let go of being right because my belief, my mind knows so much. I know better. The mind wants to be right, but it's the heart that sits here and goes, I just plan on being happy. And if my mind wants to be right, maybe that'll make me happy. Sometimes that's how the cycle kind of unfolds, is the heart is observing the mind, and the mind is not always aware of the heart, or it misinterprets the signs of the heart, the feelings, because it's unfamiliar. And because the mind wants to be in control, the mind will misinterpret the discomfort, the unknowing, because discomfort is not knowing. That's all that is. Discomfort doesn't mean it's a good or a bad thing. It just means, I don't know what's coming. It's unfamiliar. And because it's unfamiliar, we tend to avoid the unknown instead of being courageous and coming from the heart and stepping forward in the face of fear. And that is where change occurs. Change doesn't happen within your comfort zone. It changes outside of that zone. So in order for your life to change, and we all know the definition of crazy, crazy is as crazy does. Doing the same thing over and over again, getting you different results? Doing the same thing over and over again will yield you the exact same thing. And you're wondering why I'm chasing my tail. Why hasn't anything changed? Maybe because I haven't, because I don't want to step out. But that's where the biggest change, where magic, where miracles, where life just presents. Here's a new opportunity because you had the courage to go outside of your comfort zone. You will always be presented with an opportunity. It's how you respond or react to it that determines how that unfolds. So we're going to make simple cinnamon rolls using bananas dehydrated. These bananas took about 17, 18 hours to dehydrate. Take about 20 to 25 dates and soak them after you've pitted them. I'm nibbling on some extras. And here are the ingredients that I put in the dehydrator, along with those dates and a little bit of the liquid. This is the date paste. I added about a thumb. You know, it's up to you how much spicy you like. I love ginger. And ginger's so healing, anti-inflammatory, and it's immune boosting. I used about a thumb of ginger. So that's probably a couple inches. Everybody's perception on all that is different. And I added about 4 ounces of lemon ginger. Freshly squeezed lemon and ginger that went through the juicer. Pardon me. Because it's cinnamon, you get about 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, and I use Ceylon cinnamon. A tablespoon of Star Anise. I wrote this down. 2 tablespoons of mesquite, because it's an adaptogen. I love to add in the little extras because I'm all about the superfoods. And anytime you can add them into something simple, do it. If you don't like certain ingredients that I'm listing, omit them. Don't put them in. You can keep it very simple and just put the basics of 2 tablespoons of almond butter, a tablespoon of vanilla, whether I would cut it down if it's granular, but if it's liquid vanilla, a tablespoon, because if you like that flavor of vanilla, which I do. And then a tablespoon of lucuma, which gives it a little bit, excuse me. Excusez-moi. Wrong pipe. That's what happens when I'm trying to talk, you know? Anyway. The basics, what I just explained to you, are 2 tablespoons of almond butter added to the 25 dates in the blender with a thumb of ginger if you want the ginger, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, 1 tablespoon of liquid vanilla, or go a little bit less if you're using granular, because granular is going to be a little bit stronger. And then lemon ginger, freshly squeezed. Whether you use a juicer or you do like I do, I go down to the local juice bar and I buy it in big jars. So I put 4 ounces of that. Additionally, I added 1/8 of nutmeg, 1/8 of fennel, a tablespoon of star anise. Not everybody's going to like those flavors. 2 tablespoons of mesquite, 1 tablespoon of lucuma, 1 tablespoon of ashwagandha, which is another adaptogen, and 1 tablespoon of the master mushroom blend, which has a mix of lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, turkey tail, chaga, king trumpet, maitake, Astrodia camphoratum, shiitake, agaricus blazei, and botanical adaptogens, which are ginkgo biloba, holy basil, and astragalus. This is like, I'm all about medicinal mushrooms because they're really good, they're adaptogenic, and because the network of the world, and we are symbiotic with the earth. I don't care what anybody says. What happens below us, under our feet, is directly correlated with our bodies. So it is of my opinion that because the mushrooms are the interweb of the world underneath the earth that connects all the plants, all of nature, to me, they're just as easily integrated into your body. So with all of those ingredients, throw it in your blender, whip it up until you got a nice yummy date paste. Voila, voila. And then you can just dehydrate your bananas. Now what I did was I took the bananas and I cut them in half. Where did I put that? Oh, there it is. Now, I go from the bottom up because of the way that these, whoo, you're not going to fall off for me. Put you back on top. All right, so this is how they turn out. And you want them to be kind of chewy and malleable. You don't want them too tightly. You don't want them too hard, because if they're too hard, it's not going to be as easy to wrap around. Then there's a couple things you can do. You can either fill these up with the date paste, which is what I'm going to show you how to do. It's not that difficult. It's very simple. This is about a 24-hour process, roughly, because what I do is I put these in the dehydrator before I go to bed, let them run through, and then if I have things to do during the daytime. So let's say you put them in at 10 o'clock at night. It's about a 17-hour process. Maybe you put them in at 8 o'clock. I don't know. Depends on your dehydrator. I put these at 115. They're whole food plant-based. I didn't want to go over the 118, which is the technical temperature for raw, if that's how you're doing it. You can put them in the oven too, if that makes you happy. Whatever you do you, boo. And intuitive eating is really where it's at. It's not this whole dogma of, let's choose a label. Labels are limitations, people. So I take it and put it on the spoon, and I just fill in all along this crevice, because the way that they dehydrate kind of opens up the center, kind of gives you a little canal to fill in with the date paste. And because there's very, very little almond butter, 2 tablespoons of almond butter in this whole paste, you can't tell, but it kind of helps to make it a little bit more thick, a little thicker, not more thicker. And as a result, I personally like the flavors. My dad was like, oh, it's a little too much taste of banana. I'm like, it's made with bananas, what'd you expect? But you can adjust as you like. I think that every recipe becomes your own because it's being made from your hands. And when we make things in the kitchen, anything made with the hands is an extension of the heart and the lungs. So when we talk about things like the chakras and infusing or anything we do, it comes from the heart, especially when you make it by hand. That's why taking things back to the kitchen and revolving your life around, like really pouring your heart into whatever it is you do, this again is going back to nourishment. Everything starts in the mind. So your mindset is really imperative in your awareness of like, where's my mind while I'm making this? Oh my gosh, I am like so grateful that I have this opportunity to infuse. And then you roll it into this nice roll, and it's going to make it kind of squeeze out on the sides. See how that is? And on both sides, and it's okay. However it turns out. Just, you know, it doesn't have to be this perfect little thing. Art. Make it art. Everything's art. Because art is in the word heart. It comes from the heart. So the origin of art is coming from within. So this is an expression of your essence. Honor it. Just do it, right? And you can do peanut butter if you like, whatever, choose. This is the gift of life. Make it your own. Don't feel you have to follow another leader. Be the leader. That's what this is about. So I take these and I'm just gonna put them down in the bottom of this glass pan. Of course, and my fingers are gonna get sticky. Your fingers are gonna get sticky. Be like a child. Just enjoy the process. So again, and you just keep filling them up. And this in itself, keeping your mindset like, wow, you know, this is so easy. Once you've got the ingredients all mashed up and together, and you know, like if you want something, this is such a great quick fix. You can have it with coffee, with tea, whatever lights you up. Gift it to your friends, your family. You know, I've been doing this for years. If you've been following me since Ridiculously Raw Authentic, you know I came out with the meal plan. You know I have a whole bunch of recipes in there. This is not, I don't believe this is one of them because I don't think I made this back then. But there's a lot of recipes that didn't make it in that. And I am in the process of putting everything together in my own personal book because my journey is unique and I want to share with you. If you haven't already heard my journey, there's more than just I had a reaction to gluten. It was a lifelong cumulative effects of everything in my childhood. You know, growing up in Maine where we picked potatoes, they sprayed glyphosate on the fields. We didn't know what we were dealing with back then. It's not like they told us that they were poisoning the earth so that they could clear all the weeds off of it. And a lot of people have gluten intolerance and other issues with their stomach and their digestion as a result of glyphosate. Now, as I was having a conversation with somebody else earlier today, a lot of people don't know that ultimately gluten has to be processed for you to consume it. Therefore, it's not a healthy, natural thing for us to be eating, but most of us, we're consuming things based on what our ancestors, we go back to this ritual. We go back to this loyalty. Be careful about your loyalties. Going back to our family heritage. Well, this is what my grandmother made and it's her recipe and I have to carry it on. Like our ancestors just followed what they did and followed what they did. And I think honestly, we lost a lot of our heritage because we don't know where some of it went. We don't have all of our information, our history, herstory. I think a lot of it was withheld. It was hidden, lost over time. You know, we don't know what we don't know. And so if you continue to be loyal and never question, how are you ever going to grow and evolve? Like make it your own. This is your life to create. This is your story. And so, like, going back to the gluten story, you know, bread. In order to create bread, you had to process the gluten. And the gluten being processed meant it had to be broken down. It had to be mortar and pestle when it was done by hand. You know, you had to break it up. And then it had to be prepared. I don't know the process by hand. And then over time, I know from when I lived in Italy, it's another form of GMO, but it's not in the sense that they're injecting with needles. They basically took the seed of the gluten, of the semolina, and they made it hardier, disease resistant, so it wouldn't be destroyed by the pests or the weather. So they made it semolina duro, meaning hardier. So to be stronger, they never considered how that would affect the digestive tract. So it might have been resistant to the weather and the pests. It wasn't healthy or easily digestible by our bodies. That's one other aspect of it. After it's been processed, now you got an additional thing that they have created this new strain. They, as the farmers will do, they alter crops, they cross, different things, and they alter the genetic makeup of it. And there's another term for it. I'm forgetting the name. If you remember, tell me in the comments. But the other thing is then you introduced industrial machinery, okay? And this is the part most people don't realize. Metal machinery with the cutting and the shaving and the hitting of itself introduces heavy metals. So depending on what kind of metal and what it took to create that machinery, you're now introducing the metal dust into the food that it's processing. So this is even before Monsanto and before the glyphosate. So now you've not only had to process it by hand, you've made it stronger and hardier, resistant against disease and pests, but now you've got machinery that's introducing heavy metals that isn't digestible by your body. It gets absorbed into the fat, into the muscle, into the bones, and it makes it harder for your body to naturally absorb the minerals you need. Now, the next step is, now they're pouring all this pesticide, this yucky green stuff, and you're consuming that. And that's permeable to your gut, and it crosses the brain-blood barrier. And people are wondering where disease is coming from. It's coming from the stuff you're consuming. And if you're not conscious, if you're not the one who's actually handling and creating and doing it by your own hands, you're blindly putting faith and trust into a producer, into a brand, into some corporate entity who is providing the food that has been processed to you. And so when you start talking about making food from scratch, we're not talking about stuff that you put in take in a box and put in the boiling water. When we're talking made from scratch, we're talking you not only went to the farm and picked up the produce, but you're the one who took it and processed it, not anybody else. Don't let there be a middleman. It's nice if we could all be farmers in our own rights and start from scratch and do it all from home, and some people are able to do that. But sometimes that's where you start making friends with people who can teach you, who may be able to barter with you in the future. That you have a gift, they have a gift, and how can you come together and provide what the other needs? This is what community is all about. And this is what some people are kind of afraid of, because we humans are the ones who determine who is really ruling over us, if you really want to look at it that way. Like, when you turn around and you put so much blind faith in a system, then you're basically disempowering yourself. When you disempower yourself, everything from food to the things you watch on TV, to the things you buy in the store, where is it produced? Like, our country here in the United States used to be self-sufficient. And then it went overseas. And people forgot how to actually produce and create products that you need at home, which you are just as capable of making and creating, but you just forgot because it wasn't passed on. Or just like in Africa, and I remember this one, Africans used to be very well known for creating rice and different crops, agriculture, and then our countries decided, we're all those poor starving Africans, we're going to donate the same stuff they create, that they that they farm and raise. Why would you do that? It's the same thing. You create a dependency. When you create a dependency where there's self-sufficiency, you create a laziness. You take away the pride, that feeling of when you provide, when you're the one who creates something, there's a sense of like empowerment, sense of self-sufficiency. But when someone provides it to you and then you start becoming dependent upon it, it takes away from your power. It doesn't empower you. And so there's a lot of that's happened over the years. And I remember seeing that in Africa, thinking, that's not really a good thing. Why are we donating to these countries that create the same things we're donating food-wise? Why would you do that other than to disempower them? I mean, if you really were to look at that, because I remember thinking, there's kind of something fishy here. I see an agenda. And I only see that because it was the old saying of Jesus. you don't give the man the fish. You teach the man to fish. Because you want the man to feel that sense of pride. And that's like a natural thing for man and women, that you have to have a sense of belonging, a sense of something to contribute to community, to the whole of humanity. If we don't feel we have a purpose, we feel worthless. Say that again. If we don't feel we have a purpose, that's when we feel worthless. And so when you don't give someone the tools to do what they need to live, or teach them how to live properly, essentially you're taking away their purpose and their ability to contribute in society. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. You want to feel purpose, you want to feel purposeful, you want to feel full. So what you give, you feel the return on your giving. Because life is about receptivity. We are here to give and receive, not just give and not just receive. So if there's an imbalance in which you are not receiving that which you're giving in some way, shape, or form, even if it's a matter of, I feel fulfillment from giving. You know, some people, that's all they need, because that's all they feel they're there to do. But others, you know, you feel depleted if all you're doing is giving. And so that's one of the posts that I was talking about before I came on this live, is that essentially for myself, over these past few years, this is just my human nature. I'm a giver. I'm not naive in giving. There's a huge difference. Don't mistake my kindness for a weakness, because at a certain point, I will call you out on your bullshit, because I am an accountability sister. I am a tough love mama. And so where you may think, maybe you don't think, that's the other thing. I can do it with kind words. That's the point. If you don't realize that you're coming from a place of survival out of fear, because that's what most people are doing. People who are only taking, looking to get their needs met, don't realize. And they're unaware. And sometimes you call them out and they freak out and they don't like that it's being called out. But that in itself shows their inability to give and receive. So people in my inner circle, over the past couple of years, I've had to, unfortunately it stung, because, you know, it is what it is. I had to call people out for times when I needed someone to show up where I had shown up for them. And when they basically cut me in, yeah, it felt like a cut. In some cases, I literally had to remove myself and allow them out of my life because they weren't showing up the way I was requesting. Personally, completely reasonable, done in the kindest way I could. It really, for me, it's a value, that integrity. If you expect me to continue behaving a certain way to you, and you're not reciprocating or showing appreciation in some way, shape, or form, or showing up when I need the reciprocal, I need support. I'm always supporting everyone who shows up to me, knows they can trust me. They know I follow through. So if someone comes to me and has a request, and then I ask for the same in return in some way, shape, or form, and then they don't they don't reciprocate, then there's a certain point where I have to, out of self-love and not self-preservation as much, but just, why would you allow someone to stay in your life if they're not serving you in the same way you're serving them? That's when you know you've got a parasite on your hands, or basically attached to you. And there's a lot of that right now. And the reason it is because people are in fear. When you live out of fear, what that does, it's exhausting. Fear takes energy to work with. But when you're working from the place of love, sorry about that, love is energizing, it's reinvigorating, it boosts you, it boosts the other person. So of course, a person who knows you're reliable and integrity will come straight to the person who's working out of love. But they're not always aware that they're the ones in that survival mode, trying to get their needs met and not thinking about how to maintain a receptive relationship. The golden rule, do unto others as you would want done unto you. So it's just that they just don't realize that they are takers. And eventually people wake up to it one way or the other. Sometimes it's a hard lesson and sometimes it's an easy lesson. Most of the times, if someone is really a bloodsucker, a parasite, unfortunately they have to learn the hard way. And it usually ends up being that, why does this always happen to me? Well, because you are the common denominator and factor in all of your relationships. Have you been receptive? You have to have those, you've got to look in the mirror and you got to know, am I showing up the way these people are showing up to me? Am I taking? Am I giving back as much as I'm getting? A lot of times people don't want to be faced with the reality of taking personal responsibility. So sometimes they have to keep repeating the lessons before they actually understand what's going on and the root cause of their pain and suffering. They are the root cause. We are the root cause of our own pain and suffering. It's through our own choosing. So every choice you make is not a mistake. It's just a choice, and it dictates where in your life you're at. I love this. This is so pretty. And at 7:30, I'm going to the gym and get my move on. Working on splits. So the question is, this is Valentine's Day, so how are you showing up for you? Are you receptive? Are you aware of your own patterns? What are your beliefs around your worthiness? Do you do things out of the fear of being abandoned? See, sometimes that's why we do things. I've been there, done that. Where you gave because you were afraid that people would reject and abandon you. Just own it. Look in the mirror and say, okay, this is the reason I've been doing this. Now, how are you going to change that? Are you going to continue to do that? Are you going to be more discerning in who you do it with? Are those people deserving of your time and energy? We have to be very honest with ourselves in order to make progress. If we're not reflective and aware of our patterns, how are we ever going to change? How are we ever going to evolve? So it all starts with self. The compassion, the patience, the love has to be with self. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to extend that out to another. So progress starts with self. Patience starts with self. David R. Hawkins, great book, Power versus Force. That's when I figured it out. Everything starts with self. So you can turn around and try to say somebody did something to you or your life is a certain way because of someone. From childhood, there's influence because you have parents, you have family around you that are demonstrating to you how to behave and act in the world. And you're navigating it from that perspective. But when it really boils down to it, it's up to you when you become an adult, how you're going to handle it and how you're going to navigate your life. And look at the patterns from where you started as a child, because we learn our coping mechanisms and how to get our needs met through our childhood. We learn to lie, we learn to manipulate, which is our manipulative ways of behaving are typically our coping mechanisms. Like certain stories or the way we behave around people. Or maybe you're one of those people who throws a temper tantrum, gets upset. This always happens to me. You always do this. Like my mother was very big on catching me on words that I would use. Always show me, explain to me, be very specific, because when you use very general terminology, be prepared to defend it. Because if you're not, there will be somebody in your life, not sure who, but if they call you on it to actually demonstrate, give me an example of what you're talking about. You say it happens all the time. I had an example recently where I had a neighbor complain about Buddy taking a poop and acting like this is a constant. I'm gonna write really just I didn't even respond to it because it didn't warrant my energy at the time. But the truth of the matter was that if I were to respond to it, it would be, thank you for informing me. I am always happy and glad to clean up after my dog, which I do, and I did. But when someone says to me, this is a constant, first off, this is the first I'm hearing of it. So therefore, this is a one time that I'm aware of occurrence. And you have to be you got to hold people accountable just as much as they claim to be trying to hold you accountable. Because if you don't do it for you, others will take advantage of you, okay? If you're unable to hold yourself accountable, then others will hold things over you. Because you need to be in awareness of who you are, what you do, what your patterns, what your behaviors are, so that if somebody tries to accuse you of something, you can confidently respond with something like what I just said. I'm sorry, you're using these general terms. Now, can you provide me an example, a specific time, when it happened, what you're referring to? Because it's very common for many of us to always be on the defense. And when you're on the defense trying to prove yourself not guilty or right or the other person wrong, that's disempowerment. That's where they catch you off guard, and that's a reaction rather than a response. But when you are in awareness and you know your strength, you know your integrity, you know yourself, instead of reacting to that to defend yourself, instead of that, you will turn around and be very calm because you know you have nothing to defend. As my last video was about, you don't have to explain yourself to anybody. The only reason people try to get you to defend yourself is usually because they're trying to manipulate you, hold something over you, try to get something out of you, maybe even disarm you in their favor. It can be also a passive-aggressive way of deflecting what it is they're not wanting to take responsibility for. This is why doing the work is so important. This is why meditation is an imperative to mastering your mind so you can master your life and others can't hold one over on you. So the more aware you are of who you are and your patterns, nobody's going to be able to hold anything against you because you know you. Nobody can do anything to you. So you have nothing to defend. You have nothing to explain to anyone. When you can look in the mirror and you can hold yourself accountable to yourself, you're not going to have to do it to anybody else. And the tough love is holding others accountable as a self-love to you, for you. That when you call someone out, and I'm not talking about being nasty, I'm talking about being kind enough, we use kind words, non-reactive, non-violent communication is one terminology. Do the best you can. But it's all about your physiology. It's all about how you present yourself. Are you open-hearted? Are you closed? Are you going in with an open hand or a closed fist? Is your terminology accusing or is it neutral? Like, just be mindful. Practice. Take deep breaths. Be calm, complacent, or not complacent, calm, collective, and confident. Because the truth is, when you come from the heart and intentionally, I love you enough to be able to say to you, that's not my truth. But what I am observing, witnessing, and hearing is feeling in my body like you're misrepresenting yourself, that you're not being true to me, and therefore as I love you, you're not being true to you. A lot of people don't like to be held accountable when they themselves deeply, innately know they're not being truthful. They're trying to deflect, passive aggressive. It's easier to push it off and act like someone else doing it to you than actually owning your role in the situation. So many different ways you can interpret that, but just be with it. Like, look in the mirror and just have those inner dialogue conversations. And like, are you the person who shows up and tries to Jedi mind trick other people? Do you try to deceive others? Are you in survival mode? Are you the one who's actually in that thrival mode? Like, you have to be able to discern, where are you at in your life? Because true self-love is owning wherever you're at and not trying to candy coat it and not try to fake it till you make it. Because in that case, the only one you are deceiving is you. So it's really about bringing it back to self. Why do I do what I do? Don't deceive yourself. Because the more you deceive yourself, you're going to be presented with individuals who will try to pull the wool over your eyes, and they will be able to deceive you because they will mirror to you what it is you do to you. That's how energy works. You attract where you're at. Deception within attracts the deception from without. That's how you go without. That's how you get taken advantage of. You're not the victim of anyone outside of you. You're the victim of your own mindset and your own deception, your own belief system. You keep lying to yourself. Others are going to just show up and mirror what you're doing to you. A lie within precedes a lie without, comes from the others. So you lead by example. Treating yourself the way you want to be treated from the inside out is going to radiate out to the world, and it's going to say, hey, energy, come on to me. You know, where attention goes, energy flows. And so if you like or dislike something, that's just going to come to you. Where your focus is, that's what's growing. That's what's appreciating. Just like in money, abundance. If you like money, it will come to you. If you're gracious and grateful for it, it will flow to you. If you're somebody who sees it as evil, it's going to just miss your hands, you know? Everything in life is a tool. How are you using it? On that note, I hope this video not only served you with a beautiful, delicious, whole food, plant-based recipe, but some wisdom to go within, to recognize that you deserve the best. So start with yourself and demonstrate it so that others show up and give you what you got. Because the more you give it to yourself, the more others will give it to you. And that's the power of manifestation. That's how abundance works. Abundancia, like the abundance has to pour from within. The fountain of youth has to come from within. And then it just becomes, that's how the toroidal energy works. Comes from within, it goes out, it comes right back in. That's the cycle of life. And these are the little old ancient wisdoms and truths. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is something that I was reminding myself earlier. How you nurture yourself. You don't need to go seeking history. You don't need to go looking for answers. You don't need to ask anybody. Do you know we are the timekeepers? Every cell of our body, our being, has all the answers, has all the knowledge and awareness that we claim to seek on the outside. Whether you're watching social media for answers, you're expecting a system that's corrupt to fix itself, ain't gonna happen, first off. But if you seek answers, all you have to do is sit still. Because within the silence is the answer. Within the pause between the inhale and the exhale resides exactly what is within you in every cell of your being and your energy. All of history is walking within us. People talk about the Akashic records. Your cellular energy and your physical cellular beingness resonates the history of humanity. You are the longest living survival of your ancestors. The truth is, it's all within you. And when we say that, I mean physically and energetically. Stop denying your power and embrace it, claim it, own it, because that's where it is. So you don't need to learn history. You are history. Sit with that for a moment. I love you. Have a great evening. Happy Valentine's Day.